We're here to give information and awareness. That's our only purpose here today, is to give information and awareness, but it yet can be triggering. Today we want to talk about suicide. Greetings, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Love Speaks right here on the Carvil Network. Love speaks what love is, whether it is culturally, spiritually, or currently, love speaks. We are so excited to have you join us on this journey. I am Francois, your host, alongside with my beautiful and lovely wife,
Lakeisha Carvil. Thank you all so much for taking this journey with us as we continue to highlight various individuals who are making a great impact in this South Florida region and also abroad. So we want to thank you for continuing this journey. And so we're excited today because we have a great topic that we want to bring to you and discuss.
Absolutely. It's a very sensitive topic, so we want to give this warning. Firstly, it can be a triggering topic for a lot of individuals, so we kind of want you to brace yourself. We're here to give information and awareness. That's our only purpose here today, is to give information and awareness, but it yet can be triggering. Today we want to talk about suicide because this is Suicide Prevention Month.
And so with that disclaimer, we want you to know that this episode will discuss suicide, mental health, and maybe even grief. And if you or someone you love is struggling, we want to make sure that you are aware that you are not alone. We also want to provide resources with you, so help is always available 24/7. You can always text in the U.S. 988, or either you can call or chat at the 988lifeline.org. Also, if you're outside the U.S., find your local helpline at IASP, Info for Resource Crisis. And so we want to make sure that you are aware, as we will be discussing very sensitive information today, that the conversation is for education only. It's not a substitute for professional care. If you or someone you love is at risk right now, we want you to reach out immediately for help. You matter, and support is available. So we want to make sure we give that disclaimer. As I am a clinical mental health intern in training, and so I just want to make sure that you are aware that this episode is not a diagnosis for anyone. We're not here to diagnose. We're just here to provide awareness and information around the subject matter of suicide and suicide prevention, how you can help and how you can be informed.
Absolutely. So in dealing with suicide prevention, I am honored to have been blessed to be surrounded by good people. And I also want you to know, if you're watching this and thoughts have ever entered into your mind, that you do not have to face this alone. You do not have to face this alone. My spiritual father and mentor, the Archbishop Alfred A. Owens of Washington, D.C., said this: wanting to give up is a sign of success. Wanting to give up is a sign of success, simply because people who have nothing to give up. And so in life, sometimes people, I believe, feel like suicide is, the only thing that they can do, which is them giving up on life. So just having the thought of giving up is, number one, a sign of success that is on your life. Other than that, there's nothing to give up. Your life matters. Your life is valuable. I also want to encourage you that I have faced that as well. I have faced a thought of suicide at one time before. So we're sensitive to this topic. When the pressures of life started to build up and all that stress and pressures, I had formulated in my mind what I could put together to go to bed and not wake up in the morning. But because I'm grateful to God for loving people in my life that reminded me of my worth. Since you have tuned in today, I want to encourage you. You are worth another day. You matter. You matter to a whole group of people who are close, who's watching you from afar, not saying anything to you, but they're just watching you. You matter. You matter to people you haven't met yet, who can't wait to meet you, to change their lives. You matter. So as my wife said earlier, she is finishing up her master's degree. I'm so excited for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so she's had the opportunity to study a plethora of topics, and this is one of them. And with September being Suicide Prevention Month, we just thought it would be good to speak from the point of suicide.
Yes, thank you so much for that acknowledgement. It has been a long journey with completing this master's coursework, but I did discover so many topics, not only suicide prevention and talking about suicide, but trauma. But also one thing that I discovered in my coursework is in suicide that we think about suicide immediately, the intent, somebody wanting to commit suicide, but there's also suicide ideations. And so there are thoughts behind hopelessness, someone just not wanting to live life anymore, wanting to give up. Somebody experienced the trauma, and as a result of that trauma, suffering silently in pain, not wanting to talk about that. So those thoughts are very provoking in regards to having the intent to want to commit suicide, which can come from many forms. It's not just when we think about suicide, we think about someone, taking their life, taking medications or guns, various forms of committing suicide. But we want to just bring attention and awareness to it during this month, because even through those courseworks, I discovered that trauma can, kind of lead someone to that suicidal ideation, and that's why it is a question that is asked in the biopsychosocial.
So in talking about suicide prevention, that's one of the reasons why we have this bright yellow, because bright yellow really is a color of suicide awareness. Keisha, why dedicate this episode to suicide prevention now?
Because suicide has touched so many families, and there's a stigma around suicide. And so we want to bring awareness today to let people, viewers who are watching, that you are not alone. Because again, suicidal ideation comes across a lot of individuals' mind.
Now you said there's a stigma. When you say stigma, what are you actually implying?
That only certain people commit suicide. Suicide has touched so many families, so many individual, lives. And so bringing awareness today and to just roll back some of the stigmas around suicide. I think it's very important that we do in this Suicide Prevention Month, because with the stigmas, there are certain cultural groups that people will say are more, highly rated to have suicide in that particular culture or in that particular ethnicity. So I just want to be sure that we bring the awareness and attention that we can look out for one another, because it's not an ethnicity and it's not just a race, but it's an individual.
And I can agree with you that it stretches beyond your economic status. So it's not just people who don't make enough money, who have these thoughts or who have attempted this, it's not just people who are of a certain ethnicity or a certain race. It's like suicidal thoughts are not prejudice. Whether it's male, female, rich, poor, whether you own a home or whether you're a renter, or whether you're homeless or whether you're a Fortune 500 executive, there is no boundary for who suicide affects.
Yes. And even statistically, the CDC, 2023, 43,000 individuals committed suicide from various forms. Not only that, so that's like one death by suicide every 11 minutes.
That is ridiculous, and I can agree with those statistics. I have a friend of mine who works in the medical examiner's office, and when we've spoken, a lot of his calls are calls because of someone have unalived themselves by suicide.
And so that's where we have to bring this, awareness today. Raise the awareness, check in on one another, be concerned about one another, because as I stated earlier, suicide ideation, it's just the thoughts, and many have those thoughts because, again, it could become as a result of a trauma that someone has just lived through, not received counseling, not received any kind of therapy or healed from that trauma, but lived through the trauma. And so if there's ever a time or a place where that trauma, kind of is touched,
reawakened,
exactly, or
triggered,
touched,
exactly.
Triggered or touched. I like to say touch because I believe in trauma there are sensitive areas. It causes a sensitivity, and when you are touched in that sensitive place, it kind of reminds you of what caused that pain.
Exactly.
What caused that trauma, whenever that sensitive area is touched. And so I think it's so important that we bring that awareness, because if you're having those thoughts, that those thoughts have to be addressed. It's not thoughts that you can just linger in, without bringing some, because before the intent, there is the ideation. And so you want to be sure, okay, if you're having those thoughts, to speak to someone.
Exactly. And there's been so many cases where people would say things like, I can't believe this happened. They seem so strong. They seem so helpful. I mean, they're the dependable one that everybody can depend on. What are some of the signs or warning signs that someone might be at risk? So
having a conversation with someone and talking about, and I know people can do this jokingly, but you have to really be able to hear them through that joke, talking about wanting to die, and I've had conversations with people like, oh God, I wish it just could be over. I'm just done with it. I'm just tired, but really listening with an ear to see, okay, are you really just expressing out of frustration, or there's something deep there that we need to discuss?
That's good. Being able to really listen, because it causes us to pay attention to the ones that we genuinely love. I think oftentimes we're so self-involved that we don't pay attention to the people who are close and near and dear around our surroundings. So it's hard for us, because we pay attention more so to ourselves. We're kind of a selfish generation, that we don't hear the warning signs. And that, are you venting, or are you trying to give me a hand?
No, I mean, that's really good, because sometimes we are amongst our family in our close inner circle of friends, and because we joke a lot, and I think we have to be able to understand that we are at very critical times. Everybody has a lot going on. If it's not financial, if it's not, relational, there's a lot going on, and that's taking place all around us. There are forces that we know that are unseen, that are fighting, stealing, killing, and trying to destroy. So we have to be observant and care enough for the person we're talking to, because a lot of time conversation is being had and we're not really listening. We're not really hearing what they're saying. We're just having conversation, but we have to start listening and hearing for the cry. because there's a sound, there's a cry, and we can't ignore the cry.
Listen intentionally, not just waiting to speak, but actually intentionally listening.
Yes.
What are some myths about suicide that we should just really get rid of? And what are the facts?
I believe some of them are, for one, the myth that I think that we don't talk about a lot is the suicide plants the idea. Like literally meeting people talk about suicide plants the idea, but fact asking directly can reduce the risk. So if I ask, are you suicidal? That's where, as mental health professionals, we are trained to ask their question in every session. You know, have you thought about harming yourself? And a lot of times people feel like, oh, if I ask that question, then I'm giving an idea. But it's not giving an idea. It's actually can reduce the risk and increase support. You don't know if you don't ask.
And that's real good, because I know I am an advocate for mental health. That's why you're going through your master's program now. I plan on going through mine very, very soon. I'm an advocate for mental health. And every time I've sat with my counselor, that's one of the first questions they ask: have you thought of harming yourself or others? And so I think I agree with you that it gives an awakening that says, number one, I'm not crazy.
Yes.
I'm not crazy. Number two, I'm not violent. I'm not violent against myself, and I'm also not violent against others. And I think that goes back to some of our stigma that you don't have to, because those thoughts enter your head, it doesn't necessarily mean you are a horrible person. You are a person experiencing life and the pressures of life. How can we ask somebody about suicide without making it worse?
So I first want to say this, as before I answer that question, that prevention is not just a hotline. It is everyday care. It's everyday care. So it's noticing warning signs. It's asking directly and connecting to help and building hope. So I do want to make sure I say that. But when you are talking with someone and you may be worried about them and you don't want to make the situation worse concerning, you ask them direct but calm and with compassion. I love it when you've always stated this, that people don't want to know what you know until they know how much you care. And so I believe that asking someone with compassion, asking them with concern, not just a judgmental stand, because sometimes we can ask, but how are you asking?
I agree with that, because oftentimes, and I try to be intentional when I speak to people. I try very hard to be intentional. I try hard to be intentional with the questions I ask. So if I ask you, how are you?
Yes.
I want to know, how are you? And sometimes we use that as a conversational starter, and don't really care. And don't really care. And I think for someone who's at risk, that worsens it. I'm one who I talk to a lot of people. And I have discovered that most people are more interested in talking than listening. So I try to be one who will listen, but I also realize some people are just interested in talking. So when we deal with that individual, you say that we should be compassionate, trying to understand where they are.
And I'm glad you noted to the fact that we ask questions, but not really waiting or hearing the response. And we do that a lot. We go to work, we're amongst our coworkers, even our own family. How was your day? How are you doing? We're asking the questions, but not nearly waiting for the response and to respond to the response. And so we're doing a lot of things subconsciously, I feel, because it's something that we do as a norm. You on the phone, hello, how are you? But you're not really listening to understand or to hear how this individual is doing, because that way you can hear a warning sign. You know,
Exactly.
You can hear a warning sign. Something they can say could be a trigger word to say, you know what? Oh, you're not at your best.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how can I take a moment out of my day to help lift you up?
And I also want to kind of, in a sense, add, because in my profession, I remember in one of my trainings, we were told, don't ask people how are they, because our job is to keep the line moving. And so when they ask me, how are you? My normal response is, fine, thank you. And if I'm just trying to move the line along, it's like, how can I help you concerning this, as opposed to how are you? Because on average, once you say, how are you? That might be a trigger for somebody who couldn't wait for that opportunity to tell you all about it. And they might need that. They might need that. But however, like I said, I talk to a lot of people, and when I realize you need this moment. You don't even want advice. You don't want direction. You just need a moment to vent. And having that time to vent, let off that steam, let off that pressure, can be a lifesaver.
Yes, it can. Yes,
And so, and now you're going through the course now. Is it possible that sometimes when the thoughts of suicide comes, it's because we have not taken enough self-care?
Of course. And there are a lot of things I think comes into play with suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts. The thoughts can be triggered, again, for trauma, from pain. A lot of areas in life can cause those suicidal thoughts. Sometimes because one thing I connect to it immediately, if that thought is there is some area in life there is hopelessness. And so having a conversation with someone concerning those thoughts that you may be just thinking about. It could be a lingering thought, that sometimes, life is just not worth living. I'm just tired of this. I can't do this no more. These are thoughts that we really have to pay attention to and not just allow them to live in our head, to live there freely every day, day in and day out. Because if we don't address those thoughts, then those thoughts become roots and strongholds in our life that now we're realizing, oh my God, this now is becoming more of an intentional intent towards me manifesting the thoughts. I really don't want to be here. Now I'm purchasing pills, taking 5 pills when I should be taking 2. So these are things that we have to do because we're trying to find ways to suppress the feeling, suppress the emotion that we're feeling that is connected to that suicidal ideation. And so then you'll find yourself, drinking alcohol, over drinking, over indulging, because you're trying to suppress that feeling of hopelessness, sadness. These are all emotions that we have to pay attention to, and you do this by caring for yourself.
I 100% agree.
So what does that look like, self-care? It's different from all of us, because the first time you hear self-care, most people think about, I have to go get a massage. I need to go to a spa. That's not the only method of self-care. You can go to the beach and just hear the winds and the waves. That's self-care. Anytime that you can withdraw from that current situation that you feel overwhelmed and that is and that is overpowering you, for you to pull back from that place and just to be able to allow your mind to be at ease.
Exactly. There's another mentor from a distance of mine, Bishop Jimmy Williams, who I heard him state this: it's the shortest question with the longest answer. And that question is, why? And I think a part of self-care is being able to ask yourself, wow. She mentioned 2 of my self-care things. I haven't done it in a while. I have to get back to it. I love to go to the beach to help relieve stress, and I also love massages. And so while I'm there, I'm taking my mind through those places like, why? Why do I feel overwhelmed now? And continue to ask myself the question why, and do my best to answer the why, to track it, because sometimes we get to a place and we don't know how we got there. How did I get to this place where I'm thinking about abandoning my family, abandoning my mission, abandoning my work, abandoning my purpose? How did I get to this place? Because I haven't asked the question, why? Why do I feel this way right now? Why do I feel depressed? Why do I feel angry? Why do I feel upset? And as I ask myself these questions, it leads me back. And once I understand what the root cause is, I come to discover it wasn't that bad after all. So it kind of takes you off of the ledge, so to speak. So beyond the crisis, how do we support someone over time?
I believe therapy support is one. Peer and family support is very important. Even if someone is dealing with suicidal thoughts, having family support, it's very important, because those are the individuals who are around us all the time. Peer support, your direct connections, rather it's your friends, and we have to be accountable to people. I always often say, if someone has experienced a trauma, they've experienced a tough place in their life, and we heard our last guest, or guest who was on the show, talked about grief and how grief shows up. Grief is not just as it pertains to death, but it's any kind of loss.
Absolutely.
And so anyone who experienced loss in your life, rather if it's, a marriage or, a job loss, to make sure that you are concerned, or we are concerned enough to follow up with them. How are you doing? Asking those questions. How are you feeling? Not just ignoring it like you'll be all right, you're okay. Because sometimes it's those thoughts that cause us to go down into the darkest place in our life. And just those words of hope, those words that you can make it from here, you can reinvent yourself, you can survive this, are the words that we need to hear, because our own thoughts. That's why I love one of the modalities I learned as a therapist in training is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because what that does is it looks at our thoughts, because it is our thoughts that drives our behaviors. And so we're looking at a lot of behaviors of a lot of people, rather if it's, though if they're suicidal thoughts and they're constantly lingering there, then there may eventually be some suicidal intent where you're seeing the behavior now manifesting. So we have to just be more concerned about one another. We have to be more intentional, as you stated earlier, of checking in on one another, especially when we know someone is going through a very bad place in life. Rather, again, financial loss. These are places that you just can't ride out alone. Having that support system around you, helping you, motivating you, encouraging you, is a great, place for someone to be a cheerleader.
Absolutely.
During that time.
So I agree with you. Having a good support system really means the world in aiding the prevention of suicide. Knowing that you have somebody that you can trust enough with the most intimate part of you, because I can understand that can make anybody feel very vulnerable, and you don't want to give off like you're feeling weak. So it's okay. You are human. You are human. What else can you add to that?
I want to read off some of these warning signs, because there are various ones, but I want to mention some of the common ones that you can look at for immediate red flags if you are seeing these at any of your loved ones, co-workers, family, your friends. Talking about wanting to die, it's one of the warning signs. Feeling like a burden, saying goodbye, giving away belongings, seeking access to lethal means, or sudden calm after distress. Behavioral changes, includes withdrawing, increased substance use, risky behavior, major mood changes, sleep appetite shifts, or dropping interest in things they love, situational stressors, breakups, job financial strain, bullying, legal issues, chronic pain, or recent loss. And I wanted to read off this list verbatim because these warning signs, although we can see one or two of them in all of us, we can see all of us. Some of us, have these issues that we endure does not make us have, suicidal thoughts. But if you're speaking to someone and they are communicating to you, that they are hopeless and they are saying, I just don't want to live no more. And they have had, these behavioral changes where they are now withdrawing, and people who never use substance, abuse. And because when we think about substance abuse, we think about illegal drugs. But there are legal, people are self-medicating on prescription drugs.
Absolutely.
And we've seen so many suicidal deaths, not just by illegal drugs or handguns, but by prescription medications, where people are self-medicating, trying to make themselves feel better. Take one too many pills or mix the combination, which was a deadly combination of drugs. And so this commit suicide. So we have to be very intentional.
Exactly.
And I think that's the word today, intentional, concerning how we handle one another and listening to what others are saying, and also how you are feeling. It's very important.
And I think it's also important that it's listening intentionally, and as we listen intentionally, you know the norm of conversation. And in my house, growing up, we've always kind of done that. We've kind of planned our own funeral. What we would like to have, where we would want to be buried, which are good conversations and healthy conversations to have. But when they become outside of the norm and they sound just a little different, if it sparks your curiosity in a way when you're listening to someone, I think it's a sign from, if you will, the universe to pay attention.
Yes.
To some of these things that you just list off. That, hey, wait, that's a little. Are you okay? Well, let's go eat. Let's go hang out. Let's go to dinner. Let's just and be able to reach them to help bring them in. When you say mood changes, people think it just means happy people are now sad, but it doesn't. That also includes people who are now just happy and content with life who weren't before.
Yes, and so I want to give a personal piece of my story here, because when you think about people and emotions change, and they can change from second to second, and so 1 minute somebody can be happy, they can be joyous, they can be sad. And I can remember many years ago, after I graduated from high school, which was a happy time. I graduated, and now life is beginning for me. But I hit a tough spot in that era of my life. Sadness overshadowed me, and somewhat depression, because now I'm having to adult. And in the background that I came from, my mom didn't allow you to feel sorry for yourself, and she constantly pushed you the best way she could have pushed you and motivated you. Sometimes would have been harsh and okay, mom, give it a break, please give me a minute, let me figure things out. I found myself at a place where I had these suicidal thoughts, which I somewhat battled in my young years of growing up as a child. And at this particular era in my life, graduating from high school, there was an actual attempt. And I attempted to commit suicide. So I tried a traditional method in trying to commit suicide, and found myself in one of our very prominent hospitals, having my stomach pumped, and my mom showed up at the hospital after, they rushed me. They called fire rescue, because at this time I was at a friend's house when it really just started. And so my mom showed up at the hospital, and she kind of said to me, whispered in my ear, while they were pumping my stomach and taking and attending to me, she said to me, "You want to play crazy? These people will lock you up."
Wow. And it's amazing. I have a friend of mine we were young together, phenomenal adult right now. And I can remember this friend said, "I'm going to kill myself." I told that friend's parent, and that parent got so upset that they immediately began to discipline that person because of what I said. So that made me feel kind of bad, that I felt like I got my friend in trouble because of the statement they said. So what should parents and caregivers know about youth and suicide risk?
I feel today, parents, we have so much information, and we have advanced so much. Now, this was many years ago that, there is social media, there's so much is different today with children, and social media, bullying, so many things our young people are faced with. So as parents, we have to be very proactive in making sure we provide the resources for our children and identifying if there are areas in their life, because as a child at that time, the access we have to therapists and therapy and counseling wasn't available then. Mama didn't know about it, so mama couldn't provide those services. I was going through an adjustment period in my life, and trying to adapt to that adjustment, mama didn't know how to help me. And so we can help our children today to realize, okay, they're transitioning from middle school to senior high school. That's going to be an adjustment. And how we show up for them will make the difference. Because if we don't show up with the right tools and resources to help them, if they are experiencing bullying in school, if they're having these suicidal thoughts, not showing up to help them with the right resources, maybe getting them with a school counselor. There are so many resources. Again, I told you 988, that is a lifeline you can contact to find out other resources within the community that they can connect with, and not ignore the signs. Not to ignore the signs. Because I can remember before, as we discussed before, that change going from happy to sad, it didn't just happen in that one moment, one day. I can remember after I graduated, there was a period that I just laid in a depressed state. And mama didn't understand it, and she didn't know how to give me the help that I needed, till she just kind of did her best as a parent, which was aggression. And she constantly yelled and screamed every day. So what that did, that built, it added gasoline to the already set fire that I was laying in, because I was already feeling hopeless. And that what service and that what she provided only made me feel more hopeless. Okay, what are your life, it's not worth living. And so this were the thoughts that were going through my head. But now today, with children who have more technology than I had as a child, we can utilize even the technology that are accessible to them to help them, get them a part of, there's a lot of intervention that can be done via Zoom, telehealth. There are so many resources, and we just have to tap into those resources to make sure we provide those for our children.
Awesome, very good. I think this is a very good and necessary topic to talk about, and I know that the topic of suicide spreads beyond the professional, the spiritual, the economical status, and the age demographic. It spreads beyond, and that if we ourselves have not experienced it, we know someone who has. And again, you are not alone. Your life matters. Your life have purpose. You are unique and uniquely created to fulfill a great purpose, even if it doesn't seem great to you at the time or great to anybody in your circle. I'm telling you, your purpose is great and your life is necessary with us. We all experience, like you said, the highs and the lows. As a matter of fact, I believe there's some research that says the hardest point of depression normally comes right after a great success. Like you said, you just graduated from high school, and especially during that season, how many high school dropouts were dropping out and different things. You accomplished something that a lot of others did not do. But then you fell low. So we want to be aware of that and be able to sit in the moment and understand it's one step at a time. Your faith does not exempt you from suicidal ideologies. No matter what life, it happens to all of us.
Yes.
It happens to all of us.
And I want to say this, that we must check on our men. Because
Absolutely.
statistically, men 4 times higher than women. And I believe men, because they carry the burden.
Absolutely.
They carry the burdens on their shoulders of families. They carry the burdens of the household. And so we have to check on our men. You know, and in other words, I like to say as well, don't add gasoline to the already set fire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, be very, because I know women can have, strong tongue. This is a conversation for another day. We kind of discussed this in brief in the house, talking about, the tongue of women and how women can have very strong tongues. And I believe if a man is already down, don't kick them while they're down. I don't think we should kick anyone while they're down. But especially men, because statistically, suicidal rates are very high for our men than it is for our women. And so we want to be encouragement to our men. We want to support them.
That is a very triggering statistic. So if the calculations are correct, that means men make up 80% of the suicide rate.
Yes.
80%. And again, this is a topic for another day. I personally believe it is because women have been allowed to evolve over the years, and they are celebrated for their evolution, while men have the pressure of remaining the same. I remember growing up with things like put some bass in your voice. What you crying for? And so not being able to release those things, while on the other hand, women were able to. Women were able to express whatever emotion that they felt, whether they were upset, angry. I saw a court case on television where the woman said to the judge, women can slap men in their face, but men can't hit women. And we're not advocating, and I personally believe, I don't believe nobody should put their hands on nobody. And that's me across the board. However, that had become such a stigma, so now men have to carry the burden. And yes, we want to carry the burden. We don't mind carrying the burden. But in carrying the burden, we also need a place that's safe for us. We need a place that's safe to be not okay.
So I do want to say this before we end this show today, that there are so many resources that are available, as you mentioned earlier. What can parents do? But as another part of my profession, I do enrollments, and so I often highlight for those who work in corporate America, there is a benefit that a lot of people should be aware of, and I make sure employees are aware of, which is EAP, which stands for Employee Assistance Program. Most corporations offer that benefit in the workplace, and most corporations today are advocates for mental health, and so they want to make sure there is awareness and that these benefits are utilized. And so the Employee Assistance Program gives free sessions of therapy and counseling for individuals. So if anyone who's watching this and you are employed in an employer group, look into your employer's EAP. There's no copay for you to have those sessions of therapy, to speak to someone. And sometimes we wait till the problem gets so big and feel like, okay, now I need help. Just feeling hopeless. I mean, it's a free service. And in most EAPs, they allow 6 sessions per incident. So this month I felt hopeless. Next month I may feel some other emotion. So reach out to those services. Not only that, in the school system, there are resources available. Counselors and interventionists to help our children. And we just have to remove that stigma. And we have to remove the shame, because a lot of times I think there is a lot of shame attached to certain words. If I bring that word up, or if somebody know I'm experiencing this, then shame automatically is the response that we attach to that. But we have to become more bold now and speak up, because our words, our encouragement, our compassion, our concern can just save a life. It can save a life. And so I'm an advocate for mental health. I'm an advocate for prevention. Prevention means there is something I can observe that is wrong, that I can bring awareness to. And so this is why we're having this segment today, just so you can know and understand that it's real. These thoughts are real. Ideations are real. And life is real. And it's a response to life. It's normal, because we demonize it in the church. If you dealing with suicide, and I had to even go into the extent and talk with our leadership in regards to biblical, characters, in the Bible who committed suicide. We have to look at this from both the natural and the spiritual, understanding that life is real, and we have to show up and respond accordingly.
Absolutely. We have to show up and respond accordingly. And again, here on Love Speaks, we are not diagnosing anyone, and we just want to educate and bring awareness to the topic of suicide. So if you need help, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Would you give that information again to those that would need it?
Sure. So in the U.S., 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. 988. You can text that 988 from your phone, which most of us keep in our hands. Or either you can chat at 988lifeline.org, or also crisis text line. You can text home to 741-741. Even for our veterans, we don't want to leave you out, because we know a lot of veterans have come back home from war. They're battling, and they have a lot of ideation in regards to suicide. Triggers. And so there is help for our veterans. You can also call 988 and then press 1, or text 838-255. And we just want to say again, we thank you all so much for watching this episode, and we want to give this quick reminder that the conversation that we had today is for education only. It's not a substitute for professional care. Professional care is there. It's available. I spoke about the EAP. You also have resources through your medical insurance, Medicaid, all of your providers. And if you know someone you love is at risk right now, don't ignore the sign. Please reach out for immediate help. As Francois said, you matter, and support is available. If you or someone you know is suffering silently, experiencing hopelessness, experiencing depression, please reach out to the numbers on the screen. Help is here. You don't have to suffer alone.
Love Speaks is what love is. Love is culturally, love is spiritually, love is connective, and love is current. And so we're so grateful to have you here. So do us a favor, like, share, subscribe on whatever platform that you have, and hit the notification button. So every time that we come on, you know, hey, we are here. Every week we're releasing a new episode of great information, and we want you to be a part of it. We do all this with you in mind.